Welcome to a post-beginner repertoire testing video. We have black against a 1921. Okay, so a Sicilian. And into a quick Gambit, most likely. C3 or knight f3? C3 it is, okay. So I think I recommended the setup with this, where we start with knight f6. They push, we play knight d5, they take, and then I believe we were going with a fast d6 there. But the point is, first of all, we make them do something with this pawn. Rather than engaging in the Gambit, we can take this to something calmer. But I don't know what bishop d3 is. I don't think that's going to be good Gambit energy. I don't know that I want to take anyways. Like, normally that bishop I think would want to come to c4 in a proper Smith-Morra. So a little bit of me was thinking e5, but I don't know that that's really worth it. I think more likely just knight c6. We get to hold on to this pawn. We stop e5 at least for a move. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this bishop d3, but I'm pretty sure we can just take this pawn. And that's less dangerous because we aren't helping them develop as we do it. And otherwise they just get a huge pawn center. So yeah, I think we should be doing that. And then we just have to say, okay, how do we make this go safely? Part of me wants to play g6. I'm just not sure about e5 now that we can't play our knight to d5. So maybe we just start with knight c6. And then probably play knight f3. Otherwise, I think it would be d6. Partly stops e5, partly gives our knight a square on d7. And there's no bishop e5 because we take that, but I don't know if it's a line that I want to open. Hard to say. Like, my part of this series is like figuring out the openings in particular, so I don't mind sinking the time in to figure it out, but I am not sure because we went wrong in our last game. They shouldn't go as dramatically wrong, I don't think. I'd have to blunder a piece for that. So as long as I can play knight c6 safely, that won't be a thing against something with queen a4. And kind of what I'm saying is I want them to play knight f3 so I can trade knights. And if bishop e3, okay, I guess we come back anyways. Yeah, exactly. The bishop is probably supposed to be on c4, but now knight's attack comes back, or do we even play e5? Try to save ourselves a tempo, get on with bishop e7. The downside of that is this will be a backwards pawn pretty permanently, I would say. I don't think we have to do that. I think we can just play knight c6. And I think I do want to come back to this e6. We need to be careful of something with knight g5, but we should just be able to play e6, or actually maybe knight e5. I think we've talked about that before in different parts of the repertoire. But I don't really want to weaken the d-pawn just yet, so I will try to get my bishop to g7 instead. And okay, if they're going to play slow, then we should be perfectly fine. Don't believe there should be any strange tricks, like a bishop takes f7. And then I hope that I'll just be up a pawn. Maybe slightly behind in development, but not to the point where it seems like it should be dangerous. Alright. Thinking maybe knight g4. If they move the bishop again, then knight e5. Try to trade a pair of knights. Maybe especially so when they play rook e1, because that makes anything with f4 less good if the rook's not behind it. Otherwise, we could just play bishop g4, try to take that, then play knight e5. That's probably good too. Let's go with that first. Make sure we develop our last piece. And if I really want, I can go through knight d7 to e5. But yeah, this one I'm pretty sure we take that, because even if they take with the queen, we still get to recapture their bishop. Probably, I think actually queen c8 might be kind of interesting there. But we'll start with this because of that follow-up knight e5, and pawn takes, I think you can never be taking that seriously. So yeah, knight e5. Didn't really want to start with something like rook c8, queen c7, because then they'd have time to retreat. As is, they have to play queen e2, and same thing. I don't think we attack the bishop, let them keep it. They'll just grab it. And yeah, I was thinking ahead to whether rook c8 or offer a queen trade. The problem with rook c8 is it might leave the queenside pawns weaker without this one defender. I don't know that I really want to push one of them yet, and I was thinking partly if they don't trade queens, maybe queen e6 turns out to be a pretty safe square, because they don't have a light squared bishop and they don't have a knight that can easily attack it there. And they also can't just protect the queen where it is. So the question would be if they play queen b3, and then am I happy with b6? I'm not unhappy with it. My knight challenges d5. Yeah, okay, we'll go with that. I think I like this instinct. I do think queen b3 is probably right. They shouldn't be trading queens down a pawn. Help me activate one of my rooks. And try to keep an eye on what points they can attack. So that should make it easier for me. Every piece that gets traded should, as a rule, make it easier to win when you're up a pawn. If they want to keep going with bishop takes knight, I'm cool with that. Just need to be careful if takes takes, something with knight d5, but that shouldn't really go anywhere. So I'm thinking, I don't really want to play e6 still. That still weakens the pawn on d6. I was thinking king f8 actually, to get ahead of anything with knight d5, because it is the endgame-ish. Maybe a little early to start bringing the king out, but I think I'm okay with that. Just if they play knight d5 right away, if we go takes, takes, attacking e7, might not be in love with that. Then my alternative would just be push, and if takes takes, knight d5, king g7. And if they take, then I'm still a pawn up in a rook endgame. That might be the most professional way. A bit dry, maybe, not being altogether maximizing. But should be plenty good to play out. Okay, so that part is expected, but will they just defend with something like rook c1? Again, they shouldn't, because then we take once or twice if we have to, weaken their pawns, other rook comes over, b6 solidifies the black pawns. Okay, that tries to be creative, so takes takes, and they're thinking if I take on c3, they take on b7, but very similar to what I described, I think I would just play b6 instead. They would still have a weak pawn, and then I will just want to spend a little attention, not letting them play an annoying e5. But I'm pretty sure we can happily do this to split the pawns and then set ours very nicely. We have plenty of time to play our endgame today. I would love to play rook c5 and then double. c5 specifically, I think, because it stops them from playing e5. But maybe now that I look at it further, just rook c4 anyways, stop this pawn as far back as possible, and if they push, maybe I play d5. They push again, no big deal, and if they don't, really solidify with e6. That works. Otherwise, is there a benefit to rook c5? Not that I can really see. We'll try to be as cramping as possible. Yep, so that we anticipated. We could argue taking, play e6. Do I want to open the second file is my question. Takes e6, something like king f1 doubles rook e3, or we keep it closed. Yeah, I feel like I like this better. It might keep just slightly more control over things. So again, if I'm trying to advise my opponent, I think I would try e6. Now I might even ignore it. I might just double rooks. And this, yeah, we were prepared to play e6 and really lock that in. Probably just about pre-move rook c8, but no need for that. Rook d4, definitely not taking that. Fix the pawns and open the rook on the open file. I think that would be a horrendous positional mistake. And if they just protect, okay, that's fine. We could play rook a4, but let's start with this rook. Could also maybe have played rook e4. Just that if we go after the e5 pawn, maybe that gives them a chance to release. So I think that's going to be our plan next. Rook e4 more effectively than rook a4, and if they have to play rook e3 to save this pawn, then we break up the pawns even further. And now with this other rook, we've kept watch of c4, so there's nothing for them to break. So either we win a second pawn, or they have to play rook e3, I believe. Which we will take, and then likely rook anyways. Only question is whether we'd rather move the king, but I think we can be pretty direct about it. Still, I think rook e4, rook takes e5. Is there a reason not to do that? I mean, their rook is totally passive. It's nowhere close to attacking an important pawn. So yeah, I think we can take some time for this. And I don't mind if we go takes, c4, takes. It would finally activate their rook, but we'd have an extra pawn on both sides of the board. So I have no issue allowing that once we've cashed in this big. Okay. So yeah, we have options. We could play something with h5, just walk the king up, but I'll try to keep it simple. If they hadn't played c4, I likely would have put my rook back on e4. But instead, take that, king up. I would play rook takes. This might be kind of similar, I guess, but we'll do it this way. Only thing I was thinking is I don't love rook a5 because they play a4 and I'm slightly stuck. Not in a bad way, but this might take me a little while to get these queenside pawns moving, so I wonder if maybe a5 first, actually. And if they play a4, we can still play b5 to trade, and this b pawn isn't weak, and if not, then my point would be b5, and then my rook protects whichever is the anchoring pawn in the 5th rank, and the other one can push to the 4th rank. Kind of keeps an active rook, and also protects my pawns, which I couldn't really do further back. Could play rook c5 as well, try to go to a king and pawn endgame, but I think we'll skip that part. Maybe g5 really secures the rook on e5, actually. Because they can't play king f4, and I don't really want to play f6, especially not if something like rook c7 cuts off my king. So it'll still take us some moves to win this, but I don't feel like I'll be in a lot of trouble. Could also switch to rook b5, rook b2, but I think I prefer b5, and again, keeping this 5th rank setup. I think b5, b4 is probably ideal. Try to fix this a pawn where it is. That's fine. And I'm very ready to play b5 if they attack it. Even if they don't, okay. Because yeah, we need to make a passed pawn somewhere. It's taking a little while, but again, ideally I think b4, and then even rook b5, and then a4, b3 should push a passed pawn through. And if their rook has to come back, block it, then we can take time to walk up our king, and they should be defenseless at that point. Yeah, if my rook's sitting here, they can't even play e5 because we take it, so our king will have a straight path forward. And is their king in time to try to block? Push, push, king, push, takes. Yeah, technically it could, I guess. By a tempo, I believe. But I think we're still fine with that. Is there anything to make things easier? Maybe I would just even switch to playing rook takes if it's check. Then play a3, keep a fully outside passed pawn, active rook here. Yeah, king d2, I mean, I wouldn't call it more accurate exactly, but yeah, we'll continue with this. And they can't take on a4 because we just push. They can't play king c4, because again we push. So I have to take, and no, I guess not rook takes because of king c2, and then I can't play a3 because my rook would be hanging. So okay, we'll go with the pawn. I have no idea why they offered a draw. And actually, yeah, sorry, king d2 was more accurate because they can't play king c2, king b1. I was thinking the king, if it could go to c1, push king b1, yeah, okay, that would take me a little longer, but now they just don't have a move, period. So yeah, if I move the rook, then they do have time to get the rook in front, so we will just push that guy, let them take our rook, and then we can queen and win. We'll see how long they feel like trying to drag this out. Maybe we'll grab the h-pawn, and then if we can sack for the rook, I have no problem doing that. But a million ways to win this position, as long as you don't blunder a queen, basically. Okay, and if we can't take h3, we can just step up with the king. King d4, I just don't know. Would I play e5? Be a little annoying to get my king forward. Like, I do really want that square. So I think I'd probably give a check somewhere else, just because I want to keep my king moving forward. Yeah, so I thought queen a1. Right? I mean, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, we'll do it this way. Whatever. That's good, that makes it easy. I was just thinking they could keep trying to block with their rook and keep their king on d4, but if they're going to move away, then that definitely makes things easier. And let's say rook d2, I think I'd snap that, king takes e4, and yeah. Easy win from there. So we got what was going to be a Smith-Morra, but they played bishop d3 on move 4, which I do not remember ever looking at before. It is supposed to be e5 for sure. We play knight d5, takes, and then I sometimes forget if I'm supposed to play d6 or knight c6 first. So I'll confirm that again. But I remember with d6, there was a lot of directly taking on e5 was the lines I ultimately settled on because it was, I thought, just consistent to take that and then develop the bishop for sure if we hadn't developed the knight yet. So that's what we will check for theory, plus if there's anything different we're supposed to do with bishop d3. I think knight c6 should be the right start. I feel like if you're white, you still should be playing knight f3. Like, you should be pretty committed to getting black to take on c3, otherwise you're just completely abandoning your spirit. But we'll see if this was any kind of risk for black, but I felt like if they're just developing normally castling, then as soon as I castle, I was never in trouble, and this should definitely be a little better for black. Might not be a full pawn yet. Maybe here it turns into a full pawn, depends. But if not there, then definitely here. Like queen b3 I think is their last, already potentially their last good option to stay active and cause problems, but once they trade queens, I mean, it's a pretty direct conversion. Maybe you could try knight d5, king g7, trade pieces on f6, and argue that the rook endgame is harder to win. That's probably fair. I mean, you at least get to play rook c1 and challenge the open file, so that would be probably fairly drawn out if they had played it that way, but this gives black another advantage. There's another weak pawn or two to play with. d5, I think you could try e6, try to make this harder to protect, but once things solidify for black, this is also a very weak pawn, especially because they can't play anything with f4. Like, maybe there's a slow g3 f4 to solidify over there, but then I'm happy to double rooks, figure out something for my king. At some point, maybe we try b5 and b4, because at that point, if I have doubled rooks, this pawn would be pinned, but we didn't go in that direction. We got a much easier one where another weakness, another thing for us to attack, like super basic endgame principles, right? Just attack pawns, eventually use the king. I mean, that didn't really show up in this game. We just focused on making a passed pawn without the king's help because we were able to do that. We had extra ones. And I don't feel like there's that much else to add. So let's see. They have run this. Not quite a perfect game. So sad. I thought it might be one. to their, well, I don't know if I should say credit, but they only made inaccuracies, nothing bigger. Okay, so knight f6 and bishop d3. 4% move, so not unheard of, but definitely not common. This is an other Sicilian. d4 takes c3, knight f6. As we said, yeah, of course they're supposed to play e5, knight d5. And then when they take, okay, good. It is d6 first. I believe I was going to play that, so I think I have that correct now. And then, yeah, the idea would be we can take here, and then depending how they recapture determines how we develop our queenside pieces. But yeah, we knew what we were supposed to do. We know that against the Smith-Morra, encourage them to play e5, then play knight d5, and then d6. I don't think I'll add a note for bishop d3. I will just explore what we are supposed to do. So yeah, anything except d5 we can call an inaccuracy, even though the computer isn't doing it here. Kind of low depth, like I keep saying. Could take, can also play knight c6. Scores say they're both favorable for black, maybe even taking the pawn a little more so. So yeah, same concept I think, where I'd said this bishop is not supposed to be here in a normal Smith-Morra. So that's an advantage for black if it has to move again to a more dangerous square. But knight c6 is still good, and I thought knight f3, which yeah, most people would agree, people who play into this line. And yeah, I wasn't sure, like I was debating maybe e5, I just felt the pawns would be really weak if I let them take on d4 after that, so I probably would have turned into this. And then, yeah, we'd have to decide whether I would have gone with d6 like the game or g6 like I was talking about, and I guess also like the game. But their captures is supposed to be similar. So far, just a half pawn. d6 is good. Seeing a lot of e5s too. Okay. But like I said, if we go e5 and knight f3, then if this knight gets traded, that might expose this pawn long term. Not entirely sure where I was most focused on that, but I thought that could have been a little harder for black to play against. Then yeah, this discovery on the knight, so we move it back. And okay, there's our one inaccuracy. We are not supposed to play g6. That's too bad. Well, I guess we would say that I was trying to play into our Sicilian structure, which is the hyper-accelerated dragon, compared to moves with e6 and a6 are, I think, much more typical of Sicilians, but not ones that I know much about. Let's say we had played e6, and likely castles, bishop e7, queen e2 castles. Like, am I ever worried about this pawn on d6? Bishop f4, okay. So it's a little bit tricky for black to play, it looks like. Like, if we're trying to keep our full advantage, there's one, maybe two moves to do it, and I don't know if knight e5 is that easy a move. I mean, only 6% in this range have played it, but the idea is that we're getting, partly, that we're getting the queen on the bishop as well, so that's something for them to think about. What are they supposed to do here? Because their queen is protecting that bishop, so I'm not 100% certain what our point is here. Just that apparently this extra pawn in the center is quite useful, like worth a full pawn basically. And then we can just finish developing. But my other point was, where was it? Here I was curious about e5, because that's been the most popular move, but again, that gets into this problem where this pawn gets really weak, and not so much because of knight d5, I mean, not here, but knight b5. Chase the queen and directly attack that pawn, because it's not moving. It doesn't need anything directly blocking it with as many pieces as are attacking that square. If we come back to g6, okay, they had one moment to play e5, which a lot of people do, and that is quite the score for white. But why is that such a risk? I mean, I'm not giving the computer a ton of time to think, so it's not gonna be entirely accurate. King takes, yeah, I guess knight takes, so we're not losing f7. Okay, and then they can come in with knight b5. and that's quite awkward. Okay. So yeah, even with d6 on the board, we really haven't stopped e5. And then, yeah, I guess we'd have to pick something other than taking to avoid the biggest of these questions. Because yeah, that is really, really dicey when our king is not quite escaping yet. Okay, well there, we have learned something about this opening, but they did not do that, and as we said, that was the only inaccuracy I played. So once they missed that one little opportunity, this should be pretty straight. Could also play knight g4, I had said that. Bishop g4 is good. Trading off pieces, and I'll try to think of any comments I can add to expand on what I was thinking. Like here, I guess, when I play queen c8, like we're still trying to develop our queen and our rooks, and we're trying to figure out good squares for us to do that. And maybe you don't love a square like d7 for a queen, because rook d1, there's always something pointing at it. And I had mentioned rook c8. If we get something to attack our queenside pawns, it evaluates basically the same, so it's not like we had to be concerned about it. I don't know if we pick queen b4, b6, say sure, we're doing fine here. Queen can still develop somewhere. Maybe it even tucks on b7. That actually comes up in the Queen's Gambit declined sometimes, where you make a little pocket for the queen. We will continue. Yeah, they definitely should not have traded after queen c8. I said queen b3 was my preference. Probably I would have ended up playing b6 anyways, and I just would have been a little disappointed I can't play queen e6, but you can see all of the queen b7s here. Like, let's say rook c1, queen b7 is 100% safe for this queen, and we can very happily develop our rooks with everything being really well supported now. But they took, so we get to trade queens, we get an open file. King f8 does show up near the top, so that's fun. What did I say I didn't like? Was it knight d5 right away? I think was maybe slightly awkward. We go takes, and we have to deal with this pawn on e7, which can't push because this guy is a bit of a cramp. Could play rook e7. I was initially thinking maybe f6, because it only temporarily blocks our bishop. Like, we can play f5 later, but then it kind of commits to this pawn being fixed on e7. I don't think I would have played bishop to e5, because I'd be wondering what happens with f4. Oh, and then we get to play a check on d4, because we've encouraged them to move that pawn. And then you can play f6, and you're not even blocking that bishop. Okay. And then eventually you might be able to take on b2, but kind of like the game, maybe not with rook b1 and takes on b7. So you may or may not prepare that, I'm not sure. h6 still very good. They decided to take, which should, again, keep helping black as things get traded off. And I thought knight d5 would have played king g7. If we say takes, one of the rooks to c1. Yeah, I mean, we're up a pawn, and we have a much more aggressive king, whether that's king e5, king e6. What I wasn't sure about is how we actually develop both of the rooks. Because we don't want to trade, I don't think, and give them the open file, and then that rook comes into c7. That'd be really irritating. But it's hard to move this rook, obviously, unless we move this one. So I was also contemplating if you could maybe play rook c6 at some point. I don't know, let's say we do this first, something like king f1. Yeah, there you go, rook c6 works. Because we can either double, or if they take, that's fine. It just rejoins one of our other pawn islands, and then we get to play on the b file instead. c5, yeah. So that would have been fine too. But this, yeah, we can just play nice and solid. You will notice we do not take here because they get to activate one of their rooks very strongly, and then they get to attack one of our weak pawns. If you play king f8, then they have, yeah, another opportunity for e5, where we don't want to take that, let them really activate the second rook, but if we push, we are in much less good shape to solidify things. It looks like they can come right behind that, and then if we play e6, yeah, I was thinking rook b1, and then if they double on the 7th rank, we can really start to feel why this is already dropped all the way down to equal, even with our protected passed pawn, because they get two really strong rooks. So I don't know if you'll find this to be an impressive move or not, b6, but we're just playing it securely. We don't need to go overly aggressive. We can play very mature chess. And yeah, at this point it doesn't so much matter. If we take here, king f8, e6, yeah, not so much. I was thinking eventually we'd get to a position like this, rook e3 to protect the pawn. And then I was just evaluating whether there's anything like if their rook could be somewhat useful for them on the d file, but doesn't look like it would have been. So instead we just played d5 and e6 and got this really solid. And I think I had checked if they had played something like g3 just to try to play f4. Okay, I had said b5 and b4 is what I was going to look at, but you can actually play d4 right away, and things just work out very nicely for black. Because we're threatening to win a pawn here, and their rooks just aren't well positioned. Like, if you have to protect one of your pawns with both of your rooks, I mean, black's always the one who'd be taking a rook first when the rooks are doubled like this. So, tactically, it's just never going to work out for white. And yeah, the other point was maybe you come up to something like this, but d4 is definitely more effective. So yeah, this is the part where there are lots of good things you can play, but again, just trying to follow simple habits, attack pawns, make passed pawns. Is there anything else here? Yeah, kinda. If we play rook a5 and a4, then this rook, I don't know, not exactly serving a purpose. We set it like that because white's holding the pawn on a4. So I was just more inclined to get the pawns moving right away. And like rook b8 never changes anything. We just push, probably push again. If they play a3, I don't know that we commit to a4. We probably don't, just to keep things more flexible. But how quick would this be to try to win? I mean, you can probably just go after that pawn, trade the b pawn for it. Like, that's what one of these lines looks like. They play king e2, maybe king e4 is more likely, but let's say we get into this. This one can start pushing. Maybe we come over, go after the h-pawn, like 2 pawns up. Again, I keep saying it, but there are a lot of ways to win. And then, yeah, last point is king d2. Would have slowed it down one more time, because if we go through this whole thing, yes, they can sit the king on b1, but I could play rook b3, probably would have started king f6 and just walked the king up and said, I don't think you can stop me from capturing more pawns. I mean, maybe we want to sit back on b7 just to protect the f-pawn, but shouldn't be too hard to figure it out, even if they do end up blocking the pawn, which they didn't. And like I said, they can't play king c4 because we push. They can't take because we push, just not in time. No matter what, there's going to be a pawn going through on the b file. So we're happy to swap the rook for that, and then, yeah, just a couple more moves until we finish it off. Okay, so our takeaway for this game would be, when we play the Smith-Morra, I think the basic is pretty easy to remember. There is a big habit in the chapter of attacking this pawn. That's not different here. Just that we got to test something different. We didn't get our main line with e5 and d5. We got a strange bishop d3 and then playing with an extra pawn, which we have had a couple times in this series. Alright, hope you enjoyed this Sicilian video. We'll see you again for another one soon.